All right, looks like there's only a few of us tonight. Welcome. Tonight we're on week 7, so we're going to talk about. This one's just going to be focused on the housing type stuff, real estate section. I will have kind of a supplemental thing that I'll put together in the next couple days for the test, and it'll be kind of a review. There's going to be several questions on the test, and I think it'll definitely behoove you to because I'll have the test in front of me and I'll go through kind of the areas so that you'll know where to focus your studying. And then also on the project, one of the students came in for office hours today. Feel free to do that, or email or call or whatever if there's any clarification that's needed. But what we kind of looked at in this person's position was we kind of looked at the type of job they'd have 5 years down the road. Kind of figured median salary in there, at least based in Alaska and middle manager kind of stuff, is around say $70,000, and then it was to okay, there you are, you're making $70,000 a year. How are you going to allocate that money, and how are you going to achieve your goals and all that? So, anyway, if you haven't started working on the project, something to work at. Also, I keep getting questions about, well, what about the weekly homework? That project is the homework, so you're good to go on that. All right, housing, it's huge. I mean, not only is housing an investment, but it's also your life. Um, if you're not in a nice spot, whatever, it can definitely impact things. Also, it's largely the reason a lot of folks do work is to buy a house, and if it's a good investment, then it can be, it's a lot more fun than having a whole stack of money in the bank. If you're living in a nice place, there's some quality to be had there. So the objectives: look at the different alternatives, develop a strategy. When they talk about alternatives, there's sort of this, I don't know, they don't really mention it in the book, but there's sort of a time phase type thing. Most people do start out as renters just because that's kind of the phase of life you're in. You had the mobility, and you also don't have the money and the commitment to go to a house. So to say, well, should you be in a rental? Should you be in a house? Depends on what stage of your house or what stage of your life you're in. But ultimately, most of us find it much more satisfying to be in an actual property that we own, other than as opposed to paying somebody rent for our entire life. Anyway, different costs, different strategies. I still have my Alaska real estate license, so I'll talk about those aspects. But Alaska is pretty straightforward. But again, there's a lot of opportunity up here. It's a non-disclosure state, which means that the prices or that price data, it doesn't have to be revealed to the government. So it makes determining prices a little bit more difficult. There's generally lower transaction fees as compared to the lower 48. Real estate commissions do still stay the same, but real estate commissions are flexible. But there is a standard. It's a catch-22. If a person tells you, oh no, there's an industry standard for the real estate rate, well then that's actually an antitrust issue. So, but typically, yeah, 6% is what people get. But the way they phrase that, they have to be very careful. Um, so again, this is what they're talking about in terms of life stage and what I was alluding to. So when you're looking at this dilemma, really it depends, where you're at. Young single parent, young couple, the whole bit. Um, but again, most people, especially, if you have children or if you like pets and all that, it's just far easier to own a home, and financially, it's a far better deal. So we'll look at the different aspects of it. Um, so how do you spend your time, money? Some people they talk about these executive homes, really small homes that no yard to take care of, and rather than say no yard, no space, they'll call it an executive home, and it may appeal to somebody who's really that busy and doesn't have the time to do it. But there's different choices out there, and then also your preferences. You may not always be able to afford the house that you want, but you've got something to strive for. In terms of the amount of money you're going to allocate, yeah. So 1/4 to 1/3 of your take-home pay is pretty typical. A lot of times it can go quite a bit higher. I mean, people in, say, the Bay Area, down San Francisco, I mean, how those people can get by is pretty amazing because they don't make that much money, and I guarantee you they're going way above these guidelines. 2.5 times your annual income. So let's say you're making 100,000, you're doing pretty well, and they're saying that would buy you a $250,000 home. I think most people probably tend to live a little higher than that. Probably tend to be a little bit more invested in real estate. But in terms of investments, if you're gonna overdo something, real estate is not okay. Christine Irwin's got a question. Go ahead. Oh, what's happening? People are saying they can't. In just a second. Can't hear anything. Let me check the levels. I might try a different microphone. Let me try that. Can anybody hear that? Can you hear me now? Okay. So it sounds like it's working a little bit better now. Okay. Well, let's start back. Okay, so before I start rambling on, let me just confirm you can't hear me now. Anybody? Can anybody hear me now? Okay, good. All right, so we're starting to talk about housing. Okay, so let me briefly look at the objectives. Sorry about that. I was just rambling on and nobody was listening. Nobody could hear, actually. Okay, so different alternatives. Again, this what stage in your life is going to determine what situation you're going to be in. Ultimately, it makes more sense to probably be in a situation where you're going to be able to own your own home. But you don't always start out that way, nor do you want to. A home could also be kind of an anchor. Not only is it a great financial, investment, usually in terms of taxes and appreciation in that, but also it can be a drag if you perhaps are moving around, trying to get a different job, trying to do different things. Perhaps you just can't afford to be in the neighborhood you want to be in. You prefer to rent rather than be tied to some less than desirable neighborhood. So we'll talk about it as we go through. On the slides here, they show sort of the stages, and that's pretty typical. Most people, the rental housing, the desirability of it is very much a liquid type of investment, or not really an investment, but a housing situation. You don't need down payments. You don't have a lot of the responsibilities in terms of upkeep and all that. So all that's pretty desirable when you're getting set up. Later on, though, you got kids, you want pets, you want all that other stuff. Things change, and financially, there's some incentives to be a homeowner as opposed to a renter. And then retired folks, that's getting to be a strange situation now, where you have these reverse mortgages, where it's not a good situation for the person who would perhaps think they're going to inherit a property, because guess what? There's nothing left when the person passes. That home is the ownership is transferred to the agency that's been paying them. But we'll talk more about that as we go. So again, your Your time and your money affects your housing choice, personal preferences. Okay, what they're talking about here is traditionally 25 to 33%. So 1/4 to 1/3 your take-home pay on housing, or 2.5 times your annual income. Um, that's a good rule of thumb, but a lot of times, if you're, say, in an area like San Francisco, something like that, there's no way you could do that. It's pretty tough. Those people are just, they're whatever house poor they call it, where everything's going into their home. Here in Alaska, you might be able to do that, and it allow you a little bit more comfortable lifestyle. A lot of times too, you sort of maybe buy into a house that and as your income goes up, then it becomes more comfortable, and as inflation goes up, your wages go up. By the time you get anywhere near paying off that mortgage, the amount you're spending on it is far less, because unlike rent, a mortgage is a mortgage. It stays the same unless you've got some sort of variable or some sort of non-standard mortgage. But a traditional 30-year fixed mortgage is going to be the same payment. So at the end of 30 years, that maybe $1,500, $2,000 you're spending is not what it was when you first started. Opportunity cost, yeah. If you've got money tied up in your house, or in a security deposit, yeah, that's money that's not going to be used for other things. Also, the time of commuting, living in an area, more costly. I mean, basically, what they're talking about, second bullet, is kind of like living in the valley. If we know you can buy a lot more house, or you can buy a house, perhaps you're priced out of the Anchorage market, but with fuel being what it is and wear and tear on a car being what it is, you should sort of evaluate for what the true cost of living out there is, not to mention the quality of life. But believe me, I spend a lot of time out in the valley, and it is nice to have some property to be able to stretch out. And maybe it's maybe you're the only one commuting, and you've got some sort of traditional family where the kids and the spouse are able to stay home, and you'll make that trade-off. Anyway, that's what they're talking about in that second bullet. Renters in terms of tax advantages, the interest of the mortgage is deductible, right? You're not going to see that as a renter. The person who owns that investment property, they'd be claiming that, and then also you aren't going to have any equity growth. In fact, your rent is going to go up as the markets fluctuate. So, time and money you spend to repair, improve, or lower priced home, yeah, as opposed to moving into what they're talking about there is a fixer upper. A lot of times things can get pretty expensive. I don't think this is recording. But we've got two different recorders going, so I've got a backup just in case. And time and effort you spend to have a home built to your personal specifications. Yeah, custom homes, it never quite works out the way you think it's going to in terms of the amount of time. Contractors are always pretty optimistic, and weather factors, other things. But if it's sort of your dream home, there's probably that happens once or twice in your life where you're going to get a home built to spec, but you want to be in a fairly stable situation, and you certainly don't want to be renting, waiting on that home. It's you need to be in a certain stage in your life before you want to do the custom built home. A lot of times too, you've got different options. It depends on your situation at the time, but just about always, in any case I've ever had where I've had a home built to spec, I wasn't frustrated because I estimated about 1.5 times whatever the contractor said, and that was pretty accurate. I've had a bunch of clients who have moved into custom homes, and that's usually the case. Okay, so they're talking about rental property here, and rentals and leasing and all that. In Alaska, you're fairly well protected. The laws are pretty strict, and I know from the other side of it, from the real estate agents, they're always cautioning you about sort of the renter's rights and all that. It's pretty straightforward. If you're in a rental lease situation and you feel like you're being bullied by your landlord, you're probably correct. If you check with the state housing, it's all done through the state, those regulations, and you'll can get a pamphlet that will explain all your rights to you, but they're pretty generous compared to other states. So, costs and benefits associated with renting. Again, if you're just not quite able to buy at this point, or at least in the area you don't want to, it's not a super desirable area where you can buy, that might make sense to rent for a little while longer because, you have a place to live and yet you aren't tied into a neighborhood that you don't think is a good value. It's a pretty long-term investment, and most times, not most times, but a good option a lot of folks do is get sort of a starter home, and then if they have the means to continue, they'll maybe make that a rental home and move on to a bigger home. And so this starter home that you're looking at may actually be a property that you might have for a long time. And again, better areas are going to attract better clients and better tenants. And if you are in a substandard part of town, you may end up having to sell that property because you just don't want to deal with the renters that you're going to be involved with. Here also, at least in Anchorage, you do have a pretty strong military client, base. So if you're looking for renters, if you had an income property, there's a lot of good people that are in the military, have to move every, say, 3-4 years, and so although their credit is good, they don't have any strained situation, they still are renters. A lot of times renters, at least long-term renters, sometimes have credit issues or other things why they can't buy, whereas renters from a military market are generally a better cross-section. So anyway, I don't mean to disparage everybody else, but I'm just saying that I've got some military renters on a property I've got, and they make pretty good money, and they are excellent tenants, no problems at all. So renting your residence. Okay, advantages of renting: easier to move, fewer maintenance and repair responsibility, and lower initial costs. So I think we hit all those items. Disadvantages of renting, as we talked about, you don't get to deduct that interest. That mortgage interest deduction, depending on whose perspective you're looking at, the government will call it a loophole, and the real estate, realtors will call it a deduction. But that deduction has come under fire once or twice, but the realtors are a pretty strong lobby and have been able to fight that back. If that tax deduction ever goes away, where you can't deduct mortgage interest, you can expect property to decline by some amount. I mean, I'm not going to guess, but I don't think a 10 to 15% drop in the real estate market overall would be that unusual, because the value of that property, the amount of people can afford to pay for a mortgage, is going to be decreased because they aren't going to be able to deduct that interest on their taxes anymore. So anyway, other things you can't do with a rental, obviously can't remodel it. You might be able to paint it, but you probably got to fix it back. The pet thing is always kind of a drag. Legal concerns of a lease, I don't usually see that as a problem. But security deposits, utilities, that stuff's not going to change too much. Although when you do move to a house, it probably will be a bit bigger, and your utilities will probably go up, and you may also have more in the way of insurance because you'll have a bigger structure, but that's not really a fair comparison. Legal details of a lease, yeah, it's going to vary from state to state. Like I say, Alaska, you're very well protected, and you would get the pamphlet that's given you by law before you sign it, and it will obviously have all the details in the lease. You are yourself, obviously. Where the rent is due, list of utilities, restrictions. You know, also the conditions where the landlord may enter the unit. This is some things that are, maybe you get some landlords who aren't familiar or pretend they aren't familiar with Alaska laws, and again, don't be bullied by a landlord. You've got certain rights. They have to give you certain notice before they can enter. So, and again, it's the same thing with eviction. There's a process. It's not just a one-off deal. They don't have that much latitude in just kicking folks out. Home buying process. You're going to work through this. You probably won't even go through the steps. But one thing you do want to do is like they've got step number 4, obtain financing. Well, guess what? If a good agent, an agent that you want to work with, they aren't even going to take you out, to look at homes or really talk to you much until you've been pre-approved, because you're kind of wasting everybody's time. I mean, they aren't being mean to you, but if they're a good agent, they're in business and they're doing some volume, and it doesn't do you any good to look at homes that you either can't afford, or when you get in the market find out that you can afford much more, and now all of a sudden you're not interested in the property that they've shown you. So you pick a mortgage banker, and you fill out the paperwork, and then you get a pre-approval, and you get a 90% letter, they call it, and then you're in the process to go look at a home. The other thing is too, you got to look at this from the standpoint of the seller. You as the buyer want to get the absolute lowest price, but if I at all think you're a bit flaky financially or any of that, I'm not going to come down on price. I'm not going to deal with you really at all. I probably won't accept your offer, or if I do, it's only because you're offering me a lot more than you typically would. If you've got pre-approved credit and no contingencies on, you aren't buying this home contingent on the sale of your home, then I'm going to be much more flexible on price, and you're going to get a much better deal. So again, you can get the financing later, but you definitely want to not just calculate the amount you can afford. You want to have that in writing so that you're in a position, in case you find the home, that you can move on it. Select a location. Again, if we're dealing with here in Alaska, I think most people have a pretty strong preference. Like I said, if you're a valley person, that's great. You'll be able to get a big home. But if you don't want to commute, or you can't commute, or whatever, if you're working on the slope and you're not commuting that often, that's great way to do it. Price of the property, market price. One thing I will caution you on, there's some new things like Zillow. I don't know if you've seen this online. Crazy in terms of the accuracy on pricing, especially in the Alaska market. Being a non-disclosure state, they don't get access to what the actual sales prices were, so you'll find the values in there are pretty screwed up. Believe me, for most things, I'm not a big salesman person. I'd rather do it myself, but in real estate, having somebody, not a hand holder, but a person who knows something about the financing options, knows something about zoning, the other things, they can be a huge asset. And depending on your familiarity with the area, but if there's different kinds of real estate agents, and believe me, there's a whole lot of them who are in it just to don't you like this, don't you like that, in terms of cosmetic issues, but they aren't that savvy in terms of finances. The better agents are. And the truism with real estate agents or professionals, whatever you like to call them, there's about 5% that sell about 90-some% of the houses. The other ones are just kind of dabbling in it. That's why I'm not a full-up real estate person, because the good agents are, it is their life. That is all they do. And so I'm glad I've got the experience in it, and but if I was to to buy or sell something, I would probably even use one of the agents that I know. So the other thing is too that the price that an agent can sell your home for, or knowing the market can also suggest that you buy a home for, will likely pay the commissions. But anyway, that's just me. But anyway, get a good agent if well, not if possible. It's imperative that you get a good agent, and a good agent will have those qualities, and he won't just be somebody to point out things that are fairly irrelevant. They'll know the relevant aspects of the financial situation to help you out. Anyway, benefits of home ownership. Obviously, I think that's what most of us aspire to. So, yeah, there's a certain amount of pride because you can kind of make it your way. You don't have a landlord, breathing down your neck. And again, it's just kind of a phase in life where you get to the point where renting was all right at a certain point, but then it's time to move on. It's kind of like roommates. Roommates are kind of fun at first, but after a couple, 3-5 years, you're done with that phase and it's time to move on. I've already talked about the deducting of the property taxes, increasing the value of your home. Again, a lot of times you're still going to have to live somewhere. So what you're really trying to do is you're trying to keep up. If you're not in the real estate market and homes are appreciating quickly, then you're getting very far from being able to afford a home. You need to kind of jump into the market at some point, and then as your home increases, it's not necessarily that you're going to be able to cash out and go spend that money, but it means that you are going to keep moving up. Since the value of your home's going up, you'll still be able to buy a bigger property at another time. Building the equity, yep, and that will sort of sneak up on you. 30 years seems like a long time, but you'll be doing other things in your life, and pretty soon you'll be getting closer to having that home paid off. And that mortgage that I guarantee you seemed like a whole lot of money the first couple of years, now, in the 20-some year plus will be, because of inflation, will not be that much money, hopefully. Lifestyle, flexibility, yeah, don't take that too far. I was out in the valley doing something last night, and this guy said, yeah, go past the greenhouse. And I saw a greenhouse, and yeah, okay, I thought that was it. And then I saw the greenhouse he was talking about. I mean, it was fluorescent. So, yeah, individuality is nice, but being an eyesore is something else. Drawbacks of home ownership. Yeah, you do need money for the down payment unless you're maybe VA or got something else going on. Home values could drop, sure. Lots of bad things can happen, but rentals can go up too. And when the market now has been kind of unusual, where you have home values, I guess they've stabilized now, but rents were going up during that phase because there was more demand for rental property and there was less of it. So this limited mobility, that's definitely something to think about. It can take time to sell your home. Now, if you've got the option, if you've bought, in a semi-desirable neighborhood, maybe you should always buy something with the idea of if I have to sell it or rent it, am I going to be able to? So don't get too attached to a very unique home. You want something that's fairly marketable. Higher living costs, this will sneak up on you, but again, you go doing yard work, buying silly things like, I don't know, things around the yard, paint, repairs, that stuff can kill you. Rising real estate taxes, well, real estate taxes, if you're paying rent, they're factored in there as well. So it's not like you're going to escape them. It just depends on who's paying them. So different types of housing. So single family dwelling is what most of us aspire to, but there are other things. You got duplexes, which townhomes. Again, I think most of us are familiar with that. A duplex, two homes together with whatever. In Spain, they call them a zlato or whatever, where they had a common wall. Townhomes, again, more like an apartment that you own. And definitely on a condominium, condominiums, you own from the paint inside. that's inside of the paint, so that's, or outside of the paint, so that's not your deal. In cooperative housing, I don't see it that often, but again, that can get more complex. In a condo, you're paying dues because all you own is that part of the, well, you don't own the building structure. So you have to pay association fees or dues or whatever for the walkways and all the rest of that. And cool. So anyway, cooperative housing, I don't see it that often in Alaska. Just one second. If you want to sit out in the hallway too, you can do it, or you can listen to me up here. I've got a student who had to take a test for another class, so continue on. Manufactured homes, mobile homes, now we're splitting hairs, you know. If you go down to the south, you don't see it so much up here, but I had to do some time down in North Carolina, not a nice part of North Carolina, and believe me, they had some manufactured homes that were 2 stories and the whole bit. And so people will say they live in a manufactured home, but still kind of look like a mobile home. And the thing about mobile homes is that they tend to depreciate. So safety is debated. Well, we don't have hurricanes here, so it's not quite as bad. But you may see some homes, in fact, homes you may consider buying, that may have some prefabricated components, and that could be common in even what they call a stick-built home. So don't get too concerned about it. But if it actually looks like a mobile home, keep that in mind, and now just kind of remind yourself that you're moving out of the investment zone and you're moving into something that's less of an investment, because investments appreciate, they don't depreciate. Building a home, like I said, it can be a nightmare. There's a certain time in your life, or if you got some property or something like that, but you don't jump into this blindly. Contractors, especially up here, they tend to change their names or move out of state and return, and it can get kind of flaky. There are some builders. Usually it's like a personal referral. You see some of their work, and you might go with that guy as a contractor. But it's going to be more complex, and there's going to be more variabilities, and a lot of it has to do too with that actual completion date, because that tends to always slide. You never hear of homes, at least I've never had one, built early. It's always a little bit longer. Yeah, so legitimate delays. Obviously, they have to be licensed or insured, or you shouldn't be dealing with them. It's there's laws against uninsured guys, and unlicensed guys, so we aren't going to go there. But complaints about the contractor, I don't know. Any of this complaint type thing, especially if it's online, a lot of those things are fabricated. So if you were considering buying a home or going to have a home built, I would look at what that contractor's built. I would talk to the people who are there, personal recommendations, and sort of evidence of good work. But that's a little bit more involved. Most of us won't be in that situation for several years down the road. Selecting the location, that's what they talk about with real estate. It's always location. You can have, from a investment point of view, you never want the nicest home in the neighborhood, nor do you want the worst. You want something sort of in between. If you have the nicest home in the neighborhood, then if that home is located in a better location, it would be worth considerably more. So zoning laws, especially up here in Alaska, I remember, when I was looking for a home, and people are talking about, oh no, you don't want to go there because that's where the mushers are. You get a bunch of dogs, and I don't know. Not a huge problem, but it can be. There's usually homeowners associations too, that will also have some sort of zoning type rules that will definitely limit what you can do, and also they'll charge you a fee. So be careful with that. Peculiar here up in Alaska too. Some of the homeowners associations own the roads, which means they need to maintain them. So you may get a break in your property taxes, but you may pay a pretty hefty amount in terms of homeowner fees. So that's where, again, a real estate agent, and a good real estate agent, not one of these, slick marketing guys. I mean, well, I don't mean marketing is a bad word, but I mean somebody who's very knowledgeable of all these type of things is going to help you out. The schools, assess the school system if you have children. That's kind of silly. You assess the school system whether or not you have children, because you buy something in the off chance you might have to sell it. So, school systems, the desirability of school systems is going to affect the value of the property. So you're always concerned with the school system. And again, the school bus in terms of how they, district the kids and all that, that's something that an agent will know and will provide that information to you. You can also look at it online, but again, if you've decided to go with an agent and you're paying them, they should bring that up, and you shouldn't have to ask them. Okay, real estate agent, this is the minimum that they do. Present your offer. That's not so difficult. Negotiate the price. You've got a huge plan that you don't want to be talked into something. Assist you obtaining financing. Typically, you already have the financing by the time you go there. Now, they may have a preferred financer, and that can make things go easier. If you have a local financer, it makes little details much easier to work out at the end and represent you at the closing. Well, you'll be at the closing. So really the value of a real estate agent are, more in terms of those intangibles I was talking about, in terms of what's going on with the neighborhood, what's the overall price trend, is there any, funny zoning thing here, is this subdivision built on, wetlands and it's kind of a mess. So those are the things I'd be looking for. A home inspection, you will have to hire one, and believe me, there are guys out there who are registered engineers. So rather than just tell you, oh yeah, you might need to paint this, these guys can actually look at the structure. So it may cost a bit more, but still we're talking, maybe going from 300 up to 500. But now you've got an actual engineer who's going to give you a report, and again, you're getting some value rather than just some of the touchy-feely stuff. Mortgage company will want an appraisal. They certainly will, because they're going to be making a loan, and that loan is secured by that property, so they want to make sure that property is the value that it is. But it's a funny old thing. The appraisals usually come in at what the offer price is, so there's some funny business once in a while going on. But anyway, big things here are, when you're using an agent, use them for much more than these things here. And then the home inspection, I would get a legitimate engineer, and they are available. Determine the home price. This is this kind of wild card thing when you look at, like, for sale by owners or things that aren't done by an agent. Sometimes you can just see some crazy price differentials. Seller or buyer's market, yeah, it definitely affects, and you'll know. You'll see, the volume trend up greatly. You'll see, if it's a seller's market, homes will be on the market just a short time. If it's a buyer's market, they'll sit there and just wait, and you'll be in a better position if you're buying. Negotiating the purchase price, yeah, there's no fear in counter offers. The majority of the properties I've sold have all involved, a little give and take. Earnest money is just money that's put down, typically, a few $1,000s, just to show that, there's money behind just your talk. All these contingency clauses, buyer must be able to obtain financing. That's often written in there, but you should have a 90% letter, a letter showing you're pre-approved. And sale contingent on the buyer's current home. well, if you're selling a home and somebody presents you an offer like that, I don't know that I would accept it, because now you're going to be taking your house off the market with the hope that this guy's going to sell his home. So again, it gets back to whether it's a buyer's or seller's market, but typically a clean offer is what they call it, where there's no contingencies, the guy's pre-approved, and now we're talking strictly on price, and we aren't having to make other concessions. Obtaining financing, the PMI, private mortgage insurance, is not something you want to pay. Sometimes you have to if you can't put the amount down, but again, if you're VA, you can skip that, or if you got some sort of housing program, but you want to avoid the private mortgage insurance. That's not that's just an extra charge, a few $100 that would cover the mortgage in case you default, and it's for people who can't make a down payment, but generally work with different lenders and avoid paying that. Guidelines for affordability, 33 to 38% of gross income. So we all know from gross income, huge difference between that and the net. So you could get yourself in quite a bit of trouble if if you're approaching 40% of your gross. That would not leave a whole lot left to live on, but hey, you'd have a nice home. Qualifying for a mortgage, there they go. Talk about pre-qualification. There's no reason not to do that. You don't want to, find your dream home and then find you're not qualified. Not only, I wouldn't even show you a home. Most good agents won't take you out until you're pre-qualified, period, dot. Finding a property, you can, the internet's a wonderful thing, but you can find homes in, avalanche zones and other reasons that look great on the internet, and you go look at them and you go, oh, okay, I get it now. That's why it's this price. So if property's for sale, through MLS, through agencies, it's typically, there could be some good deals out there, but there's more stability in the prices. For sale by owner stuff, that's all over the map, usually on the very high side, which is funny. You'd think they'd, but it doesn't often happen. And the other problem with for sale by owner is a lot of time the paperwork's just a mess. You may think it's good, your sale may go through, but when you go to sell it, you'll find out that your sale was missing a few items, and transferring that property the next time is going to be a big problem. So be careful of that. I know as an agent, if it was for sale by owner of the previous thing, it was generally going to cause some problems. So the other thing with mortgage, fee payment and commitment, points, okay, you can buy down the interest rate, but people don't often do that. But anyway, that's what points are, prepaid interest as a percent of the loan amount. I've never been in a case, we always talk about it, but in reality, I've never seen it. So fixed mortgages, this is a bit more peace of mind, fixed rate, fixed payment, amortized. So the payment's going to stay the same throughout the life of the loan, 15, 20, 30-year fixed payments. So, and you do, again, if it's this is a conventional, but 5, 10, 20% down. Generally, the more you put down, the better interest rate you can get. But again, work with your lender. And there's the government finance things. FHA, VA. Balloon payments, there are all these cosmic schemes for mortgages a few years back, and most of them are, they're still out there. There's always going to be, some charlatans out there, but most of those people defaulted on those loans, or a large percentage of them, so not as common as they were. It was a no-brainer, at least it was thought to be, that didn't matter what the loan was, because real estate's going through the roof and everybody's going to make money, and anyway, that all fell out. Adjustable mortgage rates, this is usually tied to, the LIBOR. It's a London interest rate, and they can be pretty useful, but you need to have fairly stable interest rates or fairly high interest rates, and that's the only way you can buy the home, but not as desirable as a fixed rate one. There are a lot of times, though, where there'll be payment caps that will limit the amount that it can just upward. So, you can't end up hopefully paying 18-20%. There's usually some limit where it can only go up a certain amount and for a certain length of time. So I've had mortgage or adjustable rate mortgages. I actually had one in Spain, but looking back at it, knowing what I know now, I certainly wouldn't have done it. But at the time, it worked out great for me. So, but I got in and out of the market at the right time. All right, so this is an interesting graph, and you're going, oh my gosh, Okay, so if I do the 15-year loan, I'm going to save $64,000, which is completely accurate. But what they aren't telling you is at the end of 30 years here, this payment amount, or the payments at the end, the $600 you're paying is due to the inflation, is not going to be that much money. You know what I mean? $600 today, we'd all like to have a $600 mortgage at this point. And 30 years from now, $600, probably buy a Coke. So it's, these people know the time value of money. I mean, the authors. And so you will save money by taking the 15-year loan, but it won't be all $64,000. What you can do, and I think would probably be more comfortable option for most folks, is if you can get a good interest rate, and if 30 years is a comfortable amount for you, and 15 years would be more difficult, take the 30-year loan and then pay more. If your payment amount in here is $600, but you paid $843, well, your loan is going to get paid off much quicker. And you can do that here in the States. In Europe, they have prepayment penalties, which will not allow you to pay it off like that. So a good idea would be to, at least in my mind, would take the longer term one and pay over and above the amount. And I'm sure a lot of you probably do that. If you find yourself in a situation where you've got extra money, go ahead and pay more than the amount. Anyway, you hear parents talking about that and stuff. So now we're talking about more long-term type things. Here's the interest rate difference. So 360 payments. So again, 30. The payment amount changed by that percent. 6 versus 7. So yeah, interest rates are huge and changes. We saw some very, very low rates, and we might still. There's so much government involvement in setting interest rates right now, where they're artificially low. Again, that's another factor in your decision whether you buy or rent. If interest rates are low and forecast to go up, and you think, well, no, I'm just going to rent a couple more years. Well, a couple more years, maybe a couple more years too long, and now you might not be able to afford the house you want. But buy downs, interest subsidy from a home builder or real estate development that reduces your mortgage payments for the first few years. Yeah, there's usually no free lunch, though. If the guy's going to buy down the interest for you, give you an artificially low interest rate, well, why doesn't he just take some money off of the purchase price? But whatever. I mean, there's different ways. It's, again, we talked about this in buying cars. They'll monkey with the interest rates, but they'll keep the cars right at list price, or they'll offer you a lower price for the car, but only with their financing. So it typically makes sense to get your financing and your purchase at two different places, so you get the best of both. But anyway, there may be a certain builder out there who's, for some reason, has got some tremendously low interest rate, and maybe it makes sense, but you would have to look at the big picture to make sure. Second mortgage, this is where you're taking out a loan on your home, and this assumes you have some equity in it. So if you're upside down means you owe more on the home than it's worth. Then you have no equity, and you can't do that. But a second mortgage would be used for, hopefully not for taking vacations and things like that, but hopefully for increasing the value of your property, or maybe helping you out of a short-term bond. But again, the fact that that interest is deductible makes it a more desirable alternative than a strict bank loan. The difference between a strict, just a personal loan. A personal loan, if you go to the bank and you say, I need to borrow $10,000, and you aren't offering them any collateral, well, if you default on that loan, then they have to somehow come after you. Whereas if you have a home equity loan, they know where they're going to go to get their money. They're going to take part of your house or your house from you. So they're going to give you a lower interest rate because it's a secured loan. So a personal loan versus a home equity loan, the personal loan is probably going to be double the interest rate. So it makes a difference. But again, do it smartly. There's a lot of stupid people who also had those balloon mortgages. They also did home equity loans and got themselves in so deep, and anyway, they're paying for it now. Other financing methods, reverse mortgages. We've seen all the TV commercials, but yeah, this is going to be kind of a shock when people, the kids who think they're inheriting something, they're going to get nothing, and they'll probably have to pay for their parents' funeral. So this could get really ugly. Not kind of the situation I'd want to have when I choose to check out. So anyway, I would think about that before I mention that to the kids. Refinance if interest rate drops at least 1%. It depends on the fees. If you've got a good bank, you can contact them and say, hey, I'm paying 5%. What are the interest rates? Does it make sense? And they can tell you. For me, a 1% drop, I was only paying 4, but it dropped down to 3 at one point. But anyway, it didn't make sense. In the bank was it would just be a bunch of costs, a bunch of fees, and it wasn't a financially sound decision to make. But check on that if you're paying a higher interest rate and the rates are dropping. Yeah, you can always refinance, but whether it's financially wise to refinance will depend on the bank and on all the other variables there. Close the purchase transaction. Okay, when you get into, again, this is where an agent is helpful. You have all these closing costs, and basically the way it's phrased is buyer typically pays, seller typically pays. Those things are variable, so you'll see some of the counter offers go back and forth, and this is where some of the horse trading happens. So some of them are kind of clear cut that this is a buyer's fee, this is a seller's fee, but some of the other ones that may be where some of the negotiation really takes place in terms of the closing costs split up. But again, this is any agent they do this quite often. Hopefully, if they're a good agent, and they will be able to tell you what's traditional. Preparing your home. Yeah, this is kind of silly, but believe me, if you went into some of these homes that are for sale, you'd realize why they are for sale for so long. I mean, it's they have folks, they call it staging, and most people, just about all of us, live in way too much clutter, and so a good agent will come through your home, take a look, and then probably recommend you get some sort of storage unit and just get stuff out of the house. If you ever walk into a new home or a new apartment, whatever, and it seems, wow, this place is huge, and then you fill it up with all your junk, all of a sudden it seems like the walls are closing in on you. So usually it's more of a decluttering thing and getting the home staged, and then there's some gamesmanship with making the home. It's like anything else. It's like a grocery store where they have fresh fruit and bread and all that kind of stuff to make it look wholesome and all. But yeah, you can spoil a deal by not taking care of that. But most buyers who are not on an emotional level will see through most of that. Repair, repaint, clean. Yeah, it's usually well worth your money to, especially if you've got some weird purple or something going on, or old shag carpets or whatever. You definitely want to get rid of that. But again, your agent will look at the house and be able to tell you exactly what needs to go. The selling price. There's so many variables, but there's the multiple listing service. So you have so many properties out there that are in the market. So it seems like it's very hard to estimate, but when you look at the comparables, the comps out there, you can get a decent idea. And again, the for sale by owner stuff, for the most part, I would tell most people to sort of stay away from that, and not, I'm not a commission guy anymore, but I've just seen such a disparity in prices and such a screwed up mess in terms of paperwork. And then here they're saying, use a lawyer and the title company. So, you wanted to save all this money on commissions, and now you're going to spend it on a lawyer who probably doesn't do that many transactions, so it's probably going to take them a bit longer. Anyway, it can be kind of a mess, and it can be kind of a mess that continues, because if this sale isn't smooth, then the next one, when you go to sell the home, after you bought it through for sale by owner, like I say, it's usually got quite a few problems. You can also just list with an agent for services, where they mean, rather than the standard commission, just tell them what you want them to do, but that's not that common. Alrighty, so that brings us to the end of the property section. It's pretty complex, but this is where you're gonna live, so it is a very important part of personal finance. It can either be the goal, or it can be a means to the end. They don't talk about so much about income property in this section, but if you do this smartly, especially when you're young, if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to buy a home to start out with, well, if you, as part of your plan, try to make that into an ideal rental unit, then you won't feel so bad pumping a little bit of money into it and fixing it up while you're living in it, and then also you'll have some income later on. The tax benefits and all that. The rental market's always going to be strong, especially Alaska is not a completely transient community, but there are a lot of folks always coming and going, so there's always going to be a strong rental market. So that will work. Keep that in mind. Again, in the next couple of days, I've almost got the test completed, and I'm going to put that on. It'll be a YouTube type thing where I'll just sort of look at the questions, and obviously I won't read you the questions, but I'll try and focus your studies. All right. Thanks again, and good night.